What's a subtle sign that someone is a good person but doesn't want to show it? When you're in a group and that one person keeps trying to say something or add to the conversation but they keep getting talked over, then that other person will look at them and say, "Sorry person, I didn't catch what you were trying to say, can you repeat it?" and make space for the person being ignored unintentionally. That's a real gem. When you are having an argument and they actually listen to your point instead of just getting ready to make theirs. They are given a chance to quietly talk bad about someone but instead says something good. They don't ask questions that might hurt other people, like why you're not married yet or why you don't have kids. What is the moment when you realized, my teacher is an idiot? Second grade teacher had our class naming the hottest things we could think of. A few kids already said the most obvious, like sun and fire, so the third thing I could think of off the top of my head was lava. Turns out lava isn't real. Then the teacher had the whole class laugh at me for it. Made me feel stupid as hell for years until I learned that lava is real, and my teacher was a dick. I remember the time my fourth grade teacher tried educating us on what makes an animal. One of the criterion she came up with was all animals have brains. I asked, "What about jellyfish?" "They don't have brains." To which she replied, "Well then they aren't alive, are they?" When she wrote amateur code on my first project in C++ class, no SHT, it's amateur, it was my first program, lol. Teacher asked what is the language spoken most in the world. I replied Mandarin. He said that's an orange and the correct answer is Spanish. Which scene in a film disturbed you the most? The scene in the original Pet Sematary where the old guy gets his Achilles tendon cut from the little kid under the bed. I always checked under the bed after that. There's a scene from the movie The Road where the father and his son discover a room full of chained, naked people waiting to be eaten by the cannibals living in the house, and then they run away and they get chased by the cannibals. That scene really traumatized me when I was young. I remember crying so hard when I watched that movie. That one scene in Silent Hill where Pyramid Head basically skinned the lady in his grasp. That was fun for 7-year-old me. The Fly, when the lady is having a baby and a giant maggot is born, turns my stomach. This was so horrifying to me at the time because I was so young when I watched it. But the last scene in Cannibal Holocaust where the cannibals assaulted and attacked one of the film crew has just stayed with me since. What basic, children's age level fact did you only find out embarrassingly later in life? My 31-year-old girlfriend thought islands don't touch the bottom of the ocean. Once when I was 17 I was losing my mind trying to find cupcake mix in the baking aisle, only to then have the epiphany that cupcakes are just small cakes. I was 23 when I learned I was allergic to apples. Someone was complaining about their throat closing up after smoking, and I responded with, "Oh yeah, like when you eat an apple?" You can imagine how the conversation went from there. My mom used to tell me the car doesn't start if the seatbelts aren't buckled. Didn't know that wasn't a real feature until I was 22. What is the worst thing you've overheard while pretending to be asleep? When I was a kid, I used to be scared of monsters or something creeping up on me in my sleep, so I would always ask my dad to check on me before he went to bed. It made me feel more comfortable. One night, I was still awake when I heard him coming up the stairs, and I wasn't supposed to be awake and knew I would get in trouble if he saw me, so I pretended to be asleep. He came into my room and just kinda stared at me for a few seconds, then came up close to my bed, lifted the blanket up, farted under it, turned around and left. It's been at least 15 years and I remember that night vividly. He vehemently denies it to this day, but I know what happened. My friends talking about going into my wallet later and steal my money and then leave before I notice. I kicked them out. On a class trip, I heard a girl talk badly about me to the other girls in my room, saying I was a retard and too dumb to stand up for myself. She said the only reason she didn't bully me out of this school was because she needed me to help her with my homework. Then my best friend stood up for me. She said that I wasn't dumb and just a bit shy, and then told her to F off. What's a really effed up thing you've witnessed as a kid but didn't realize it was until you were older? My mom used to sleep with dudes while I was in the same bed as her. Never really clicked till I got older. Let's say my therapist isn't a fan of my mother at all. My uncle on the farm took his really old dog for a walk in the woods when I was about 7. He came back without him, and when I cried asking where he was, my mom told me he must have gotten lost. So every weekend for the rest of that summer I would put food and a blanket at the edge of the woods and sit and call his name. I was convinced he was finding his way to the food because it was being eaten, but he was too scared of getting in trouble for getting lost, so he was hiding in there. Lived in a townhouse. In my bedroom at night I would hear the kids next door scream and cry. My parents called the police once, but the man claimed he was playing with his kids and didn't let them in, and apparently the police couldn't do anything. Found out when I was older that the man had later tried to kill the whole family, kids, baby included, with a pair of scissors. My friend had a lock on the outside of her bedroom door. I thought it was weird but didn't really think much about it. It turned out her parents would literally lock her in her room for long periods of time as punishment. Have you ever woke up in the middle of a dream and the dream was so interesting that you wanted to go back to sleep to see the end of it? If so, what was the dream? Was exploring a jungle with a group of, I assume, friends. We ended up discovering some kind of temple, but it was dark so we decided to set up camp. I was charged with gathering drywood and leaves for the fire. While macheting my way through vines, I heard my name being screamed by one of the group members in a terrified way, repeatedly, woke up to see my mom yelling my name and to get the F up already. I never found out what that temple was. I used to have lucid dreams in my early to mid-20s. As soon as I'd realize I was asleep, I'd start flying or just rising to the ceiling because it was a cool way to test it. Then my immediate thought would be, who should I pretend to sleep with? And the excitement over that possibility woke me up every damn time. I have a crush of 3 years, who rejected me, yet I dreamt about being with her as couples. I know this will never happen in real life, so when I woke up, I forced myself to sleep again. Unfortunately, that was the last of it. Parents of Reddit, what is most effed up secret you are hiding from your children? I'm the child, but my dad waited till I'm grown up to tell me that my mom gave me a lot of sleeping pills when I was a little child, so she could leave me alone at home to maintain her relationship with her lover while my dad was working in another country. That cleared up many things. My parents told me my sister is adopted. They didn't tell her. She's 34, by the way. Help, what do I do? Kind of the opposite. But, on my 18th birthday, my father walked into my room with a bag of weed and a bunch of rolling papers and showed me the entire hidden portion of our house, not on blueprints, access through hidden door, that he used to grow weed. I had gotten grounded for smoking weed several times by that point in my life. This was in Florida in the 90s. A colleague of mine has a friend who hid from her 8-year-old daughter that she, the 8-year-old, would die within a few years because of a terminal illness she got. After reading a bunch of these, I feel pretty good that my most effed up secret is that I eat most of their Halloween Easter parade candy when they are at school. Ex-homeless Redditors, what was the scariest thing that you ever saw on the streets? I was homeless back when I was 19. After a few weeks of sleeping rough, I was approached one evening by a man dressed as a priest. At this point I had no idea if he was a priest or someone out to deceive me. Being wary of the priest outfit, I straight away told him I have no interest in talking about God. What he said next has stuck with me ever since. I am not here to talk about God, I'm here to make sure you are safe. We talked for quite a while until it was dark, and that's when he offered me a bed for the night. Alarm bells were going off in my head, but he had seemed genuine, so I went with him. He drove me to a house in the suburbs and asked me to wait in his car whilst he spoke to someone. A few minutes later he returned with another man who offered to let me sleep in his garage for the night. Everything inside me was saying this is a bad idea, but I accepted as I had nothing left to lose. The garage was pretty standard, tools, workbench, etc., except in the corner there was a box spring and some blankets. There was a connecting door to the main house that the man told me he would have to keep locked during the night. He apologized but said he had kids in the house and couldn't take the risk. The priest asked if he could come by in the morning and speak to me, then went into the house. The man. I don't think I slept at all that night. I was terrified. I had no reason to be afraid of either man, as they had been nothing but nice to me. However, after living on the streets for a while, you come to learn that nothing comes for free and you shouldn't trust anyone. The morning rolls around and the most amazing thing happened. The man knocked on his own garage door to ask me if he could come in. This might not sound amazing, but when you've been living rough with zero privacy, someone asking if they can enter your space, which is actually his space, gives you a sense of being human again. Someone actually respects you enough to ask your permission. I spoke with both him and the priest every day for the 7 weeks I slept in his garage. Between them they managed to get me into a subsidized efficiency apartment, think studio apartment but a lot smaller, got me a job and helped me get my life back on track. That was over 20 years ago, and I will also be indebted to both of them. I still send Christmas cards to the man whose garage was my home and visited him 2 years ago for Thanksgiving. Sadly, the priest passed away a few years back, but I guarantee that if there is a heaven, he got fast-tracked in.